The buzzing started somewhere outside, a hummingbird caught in the glass maybe, frantic and tiny against the vast quiet of the afternoon. I was staring at the empty space on the felt lining of the jewelry box. Not just any space. The space where the diamond necklace my grandmother wore on her wedding day used to rest, nestled beside the sapphire pendant he gave me when our daughter was born. And the pearl earrings I bought myself after closing the biggest deal of my career. Empty. A hollow echo in the polished wood. My fingers trace the vacant indentations. The air feels thin. My breath catches, sharp, like a broken rib. It isn't just the value. It's the history, the weight of years, the promises whispered, the moments marked.
Gone.
Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Our life wasn't a fairy tale, not even close, but it was solid. Like an old oak table, scarred but sturdy. We built it piece by piece over 15 years. Shared jokes over burnt toast, argued over finances under the pale kitchen light, held hands in hospital waiting rooms. We had the comfortable rhythm of two people who knew each other's silences, who could finish each other's sentences without even trying. We had a home filled with the ghosts of laughter and the scent of old books and rain. I was a marketing executive good at building brands, creating narratives people believed in. He was an engineer, methodical, reliable, grounded. Or so I thought. Our desires were simple, aligned. A good life for our daughter, a comfortable retirement, peaceful evenings side by side. My jewelry box, a heavy, ornate thing inherited from my mother, was more than just storage. It was a physical timeline of our life, and mine before him. Each piece a chapter. Each glint of gold or stone a memory etched in metal and fire. I knew every piece, every clasp, every tiny scratch. I knew the weight of the pearls against my skin, the way the sapphire caught the light. These weren't just things. They were anchors to moments, to identity. Years ago, driven by some practical instinct, maybe it was the insurance update, maybe it was just a slow Tuesday afternoon, I'd taken the box to the local pawnshop, the reputable one, the one that felt more like an antique dealer than a cash-for-gold place. I had everything appraised, photographed, cataloged. And, crucially, I registered myself as the sole owner of record for the entire collection, adding a rider that required my verified ID for any transaction involving any piece. It felt like a sensible adult thing to do, like updating a will or checking the smoke detectors. A quiet, almost mundane act of preservation. I promptly forgot about it, the papers filed away in a drawer, the memory fading into the background hum of daily life. A forgotten seatbelt clicked into place long before the collision. The disruption started subtly. Late nights at work stretched into weekends. A new phone he was suddenly glued to, screen angled away from me. A coolness in his touch, a distance in his eyes that I initially attributed to stress, to the grind of his job, to the general fatigue of middle age. I tried to bridge the gap, offered back rubs, suggested weekend getaways, left little notes in his lunch bag. He'd respond with polite deflection, a tired smile, a shrug. The oak table was developing cracks I couldn't sand away. The first noticeable sign, the first tangible evidence that something was fundamentally wrong, wasn't a lipstick stain or a strange text message. It was a faint, unfamiliar perfume clinging to his jacket, something overly sweet and cloying, utterly unlike the clean scent I associated with him. It was a jarring note in the symphony of our familiar life. Then came the casual dismissals, the slight impatience when I asked about his day, the way he'd retreat behind his phone like a shield. The arguments started small, brittle exchanges over nothing that quickly escalated into icy silence. The air in the house grew thick with unspoken accusations, with the heavy weight of what wasn't being said. I started watching him, really watching him, seeing a stranger move through the rooms we built together. The way he avoided my gaze, the nervous energy that pulsed beneath his skin. The man I knew was dissolving, replaced by someone guarded and secretive. My early attempts to understand, to fix whatever this was, were clumsy and fueled by desperation. I tried talking, really talking, sat him down, asked him what was wrong, poured out my fears, my confusion. He met it with a wall of denial, a practiced blankness that chilled me to the bone. "Nothing's wrong," he'd say, his voice flat. "Just tired," or, "You're imagining things," the classic gaslighting. Making me question my own sanity, my own perception of the widening chasm between us. I started checking his phone when he was in the shower, a shameful invasion of privacy born from a gnawing fear. Found generic work emails, news articles. Nothing incriminating. He was good. Or, I wasn't looking in the right place. The fear curdled into a cold knot in my stomach. Sleep became a luxury. My nights spent replaying every interaction, searching for clues, for the moment it all went wrong. My work suffered. The focus, the sharp clarity I usually possessed, was dulled by anxiety. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of suspicion, with no land in sight. The house, once my sanctuary, felt like a cage. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant siren, every rustle of leaves outside the window amplified the silence between us, the growing emptiness where intimacy used to be. The problems intensified. He started staying out overnight, citing urgent work trips that seemed to pop up with increasing frequency. His explanations were vague, flimsy even to his own ears, I suspected. He stopped wearing his wedding ring. Not ostentatiously, just not wearing it. Claimed it was bothering his skin, that he'd resized it too tight years ago and hadn't gotten around to fixing it. A ridiculous lie. The man wore that ring through weight fluctuations, through everything. It was a physical symbol of the life we shared, and he'd just removed it. Like removing a limb, without comment. His financial behavior became erratic. Large sums withdrawn from our joint account without explanation. He became defensive, snapping when I asked about bills, about the budget we used to meticulously plan together. The oak table wasn't just cracking now, it was splintering. The man I married, the methodical, reliable engineer, was unraveling before my eyes, taking our life with him. The emotional toll was immense. I felt isolated, humiliated, heartbroken. The foundation of my world was crumbling. I confided in a close friend, whispering my fears over hushed phone calls, feeling a profound sense of shame admitting that my marriage, the one everyone saw as stable, was a facade. The midpoint shift, the major emotional realization, hit me not like a lightning bolt, but like slow, seeping poison. I found a small, expensive-looking gift bag hidden in the back of his closet. Inside was a delicate, silver bracelet with a tiny charm. Not my style. Not a gift for me. It felt too new. Too thoughtful in a way he hadn't been with me in months. And then, the next day, purely by chance, scrolling through social media, I saw her. A woman I vaguely knew through mutual acquaintances, someone younger, vibrant, someone who always seemed a little too interested in him at social gatherings years ago. And in one of her recent photos, a candid shot raising a glass, I saw it. The bracelet. On her wrist. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just vague suspicion anymore. It was concrete. It was real. It was a physical representation of his betrayal, worn openly by another woman. The truth slammed into me with the force of a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. He wasn't just distant, not just tired. He was building a life with someone else, piece by piece, right under my nose. The reality was so much colder, so much more brutal than the fear. It wasn't just about him drifting away, it was about him actively replacing me, replacing us. The pain was a living thing inside me, twisting, burning. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. A cold, hard anger. A clarity born of absolute certainty. He wasn't just destroying our life, he was mocking it. Everything fell apart after that. The confrontation, when it finally came, was ugly and futile. Armed with the knowledge of the bracelet, I cornered him one evening. Showed him the photo on my phone. His face went slack for a split second, then hardened into that familiar mask of denial. He lied. Stammered something about a work colleague, a going-away gift, a harmless friendship. It was pathetic. The man I knew, the man of integrity, was gone. Replaced by this hollow shell, this coward weaving transparent lies. My anger boiled over. I screamed. I accused him of everything, the late nights, the money, the stolen intimacy. He didn't scream back. He just shut down. Became a stone. You're being crazy, he said, his voice low and flat, cutting through my fury. You're imagining things again. The same old script. He didn't apologize. Didn't confess. Didn't show an ounce of remorse. He just retreated, emotionally and physically. He packed a bag that night and left. Just left. Walked out the door with his flimsy excuses and his lies, leaving me standing in the wreckage of our life, the silence in the house louder than any scream. All felt lost. My marriage was over, my trust shattered, and the man I loved was a stranger who had just abandoned me. The deepening crisis wasn't just his departure, it was the profound sense of aloneness, the feeling that the ground had vanished beneath my feet. I was adrift, heartbroken, and utterly powerless. Or so I thought. Lying awake in the empty bed that night, the silence in the house was a physical weight pressing down on me. The grief was a raw wound, but as the hours bled into dawn, something shifted. The passive despair, the feeling of being a victim, began to recede, replaced by a quiet, simmering fury. He had left me. He had betrayed me. He had stolen from me. Not just my peace, my future, but tangible pieces of my history. Pieces connected not just to him, but to my grandmother, my mother, to my own hard-won successes. He had taken symbols of my identity, presumably to give them to her, the woman he chose over me. The sheer audacity of it, the callous disregard, ignited a cold fire in my gut. I wasn't going to crumble. I wasn't going to let him walk away, leaving me with nothing but ashes and the echoes of his lies. The turning point wasn't a sudden burst of strength, but a slow, dawning clarity. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was about reclaiming myself, reclaiming my history, reclaiming the pieces he had tried to erase or repurpose for his new narrative. A fierce, protective instinct surged within me, not just for myself, but for the woman I was before him, the woman I needed to be now. I wouldn't just survive this. I would find a way to stand taller on the other side. The passive victim died in that silent house. Something harder, colder, and infinitely more determined was born. I would fight, not with tears or pleas, but with strategy. With cold, calculated precision. The engineer in him might have built sturdy structures, but he overlooked the fundamental principles of ownership and paper trails. My marketing brain, the one that built narratives people believed in, was about to build a new narrative. One where he wasn't the hero escaping his old life, but the villain caught in his own trap. I thought about the jewelry, about the empty spaces in the box. And then, like a flicker of distant memory, I remembered. The pawnshop, the registration, the forgotten papers in the drawer. The climax wasn't loud or dramatic in the way you see in movies. It was a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on a spreadsheet, my mind still a battlefield of grief and strategy. My cell rang. An unknown number. Usually I'd ignore it, but something made me answer. Hello, I said, my voice tight. Yes, is this my name? A polite, professional voice asked. This is Robert from Miller's Pawn and Antiques. My heart stopped. Miller's. The pawn shop. The forgotten registration. Yes, I managed, my voice barely a whisper. This is me. We have a gentleman here. The voice continued, calm and measured, utterly oblivious to the earthquake it was causing inside me. Mr. Husband's name. He's attempting to pawn several pieces of jewelry that are registered under your name and require your verified identification for transaction. We tried calling the secondary number listed, but it went straight to voicemail. He paused, waiting. I couldn't speak. My mind raced. He hadn't just taken the jewelry. He was trying to pawn it. He was trying to turn my history, my identity, my heirlooms, into cash for his new life. The betrayal was deeper, dirtier, than I had even imagined. And he had walked straight into the trap I had unknowingly set years ago. Mrs. My name? The voice prompted gently. Are you there? I found my voice, steadying it with an effort that felt superhuman. Yes, I said. I'm here. Could you confirm whether you authorize this transaction? He asked. Authorize it? The man who had just walked out on me, trying to sell my grandmother's necklace? A cold, hard certainty settled over me, heavy and absolute. This wasn't just about retrieving the jewelry anymore. This was about justice. About showing him that actions have consequences. About proving that I wasn't just someone to be discarded, someone to be stolen from. No, I said, my voice clear and ringing with an authority I hadn't felt in weeks. I do not authorize this transaction. Those items were taken without my knowledge or consent, a slight pause on the other end. Understood, Mrs. My Name, the voice said. According to our records and the terms of your registration, we are unable to proceed with the transaction. We will notify Mr. Husband's name immediately. We will hold the items here for your collection, and we've also alerted the local precinct as per the terms of the registration in cases of attempted unauthorized sale, the local precinct. He never knew I had quietly built a paper fortress around my treasures. I imagined him standing there, probably trying to look casual, maybe even flashing a charming smile at the clerk, thinking he was in the clear. And then, the polite refusal. The mention of my name. The revelation of the registration. The call to the police. The ground collapsing beneath his feet. The satisfaction was a dark, powerful current running through me, chilling and exhilarating. I could almost see him, the color draining from his face, his carefully constructed facade shattering in an instant. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling slightly. The silence this time was different. Not empty, but full of potential energy. Full of a cold, quiet power. I called the pawnshop back a few minutes later, my voice steady now. I arranged to collect my jewelry the next day. I didn't ask about him. I didn't need to know his reaction from them. I could picture it perfectly in my mind. The moment he realized he was caught, not by some detective, not by my pleading, but by a piece of paper signed years ago, by a procedure he never bothered to ask about, by my forgotten foresight. I later heard, through a friend of a friend, that he had collapsed at the pawnshop, literally hit the floor, overwhelmed by the shock and the sudden, undeniable consequence of his actions. He hadn't just lost me, he had lost his freedom, his reputation, everything he was trying to build with her. The mistress, oblivious, apparently waited for him outside, wondering why he was taking so long. When he finally emerged, pale and shaking, with police officers accompanying him, she finally understood. He was arrested right there. Not for cheating, not for leaving, but for theft and attempted fencing of stolen goods. My jewelry, my history, had turned on him. The aftermath wasn't a triumphant celebration. It was quieter, more complex. I went to the pawnshop the next day. Walking in felt surreal. It smelled of old wood and polish. Robert, a kind-faced man with steady eyes, greeted me. He led me to a back room where my jewelry box sat on a velvet cloth, looking strangely small and vulnerable. My pieces were laid out beside it. The necklace, the pendant, the earrings, glinting under the light. Seeing them there, safe, after the fear of their loss, felt like finding a part of myself I thought was gone forever. I picked up the grandmother's necklace. It felt heavy in my hand, solid and real. It wasn't just gold and diamonds, it was resilience. It was history. Robert explained the process, the police report, the temporary hold until the legal proceedings were sorted. It was all so procedural, so utterly detached from the emotional storm it represented. I thanked him, my voice thick with emotion. He just nodded, understanding in his eyes. Walking out of the pawnshop, the heavy box clutched in my arms, the sunlight felt brighter, the air cleaner. My husband was gone. Our marriage was over. There were painful legal battles ahead, the mess of divorce, the explaining to our daughter. The scars of betrayal run deep and don't fade easily. But I had my pieces back. Not just the jewelry, but the pieces of myself I had felt slipping away. The quiet confidence, the resilience, the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, I had the strength, the foresight, to protect what was mine. He had tried to erase my history, to sell it off for parts, but he had failed. My jewelry wasn't a trophy of victory, it was a symbol of survival. A reminder that I was the registered owner of my own life, and no one, not even the man I loved, could take that from me without consequence. The bittersweet taste lingered, the pain of the loss of the marriage mixed with the cold satisfaction of justice, the vindication that came not from revenge, but from simply standing on the truth of ownership. The oak table was shattered, yes, but the ground beneath it, my ground, was still solid. I could build again. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version in the comments. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.